Hi everybody, welcome to the event, in person and online, to Smashing the Glass Ceiling in STEM. This panel is being brought to you by QUT and Careers with STEM, and my name is Heather Catchpole. I'm one of the founders of Careers with STEM. I would like to first acknowledge the traditional owners of this land, the Turrbal and Yagara, who are the First Nations owners of the lands in which we find ourselves today, where QUT now stands. I acknowledge the sovereignty of Aboriginal peoples everywhere, the quality and depth of their scientific knowledge, and I pay my respects to their elders past, present, and emerging. How lucky are we to be in a country with 60,000 years worth of science and innovation to celebrate, and how fortunate are we to be here at QUT, an absolutely outstanding university for STEM, a future-focused university, and one in which, you know, we're really making the most of Science Week and making the most of women in STEM who are joining us today. It couldn't be a better place for our discussion, Smashing the Glass Ceiling in STEM. STEM leads to very many diverse careers. I started my own degree in STEM, in geology, and moved into journalism, television, and radio production, eventually founding a business which reaches over 1 million students to talk about STEM careers all across the globe. So science, technology, engineering, and maths careers, as you may know, are growing twice as fast as other careers. They lead to many diverse outcomes. Starting in a STEM degree is a very transferable area. You can start in STEM and lead absolutely anywhere, as you'll discover today. So I studied geology, but at times I did feel like it wasn't really for me. There was a sense of masculinity sometimes in the room, particularly on the field trips. There was a bit of a drinking culture, and I wasn't really sure that science was a good fit for me. It turns out communicating science was more my thing, and I've had an absolutely amazing career since then, reporting from live volcanoes, visiting nuclear reactors. I've been to Google in the US. We launched our magazine, Careers with STEM, at Harvard University in Massachusetts. So I'm very excited about STEM. But why should you be excited? Well, for a start, you can literally change the world with STEM. When you think about the different areas where STEM can lead, we're talking about obviously battling pandemics, we're talking about climate change, we're talking about food security, we're talking about the things that we do and we use every day, the data science behind retail, the user experience behind the technology that we use every day. Careers in STEM are literally the ones that are going to be growing into the future. So there's a lot of reasons to find out about STEM careers, but there's maybe not the diversity that we would hope for. So why is this a problem? Well, for a start, think about the things that we use, like say seatbelt design. A lot of seatbelt design was undertaken on male crash test dummies, as many of you will know. So what do we end up with? We end up with more fatal accidents for women and children. It's that serious a kind of thing. If you don't have the people in there to design those products that we use, then we won't get good products for everybody. So there's one reason for diversity. We need diversity of thought, we need diversity of culture, we need diversity of gender to really develop the world that we want to live in today. And thankfully for all of you, we have a panel of extraordinary women today who have entered many different diverse areas of STEM and are at different stages of their careers. Now, these 5 women have some amazing advice as to at what stage of this pipeline of STEM they have developed strategies, they have worked their way to delivering the outcomes that they are today. I'm really excited for you to meet these women. I'd like to first just have a little raise of hands. How many people here have met a female engineer? Oh my God, that is awesome. Well, you're going to meet some today. And I think that, you know, this is what we need to think about is when you think of an engineer, when kids think of an engineer, they're maybe not thinking about who that engineer is and what they do. Who knows a woman working in science? Fantastic. Give yourselves a big round of applause. I love it. All right, I'm expecting some very good questions because I obviously have an educated audience. So at the end of the panel, we will be asking questions. Louise here will be going around with the roving mic. So do save up your questions for our panel at the end. And I'd now like to welcome our moderator, Jennifer Macleod, to introduce our panel. Jennifer is the Associate Professor and Head of School at Chemistry and Physics at QUT. She holds a PhD in Physics from Queen's University in Kingston, Canada, and held research positions in Canada and Italy before joining QUT in 2015. She has held a Natural Science and Engineering Research Council Canada postdoctoral fellowship, as well as an Australian Research Council Discovery Early Career Researcher Award. She was recently named a Fellow of the Queensland Academy of Arts and Science, and she is passionate about teaching and increasing diversity and inclusion in physics. So please join me in saying thank you to Jennifer for moderating, and please welcome our panel to the stage.
Thanks so much, Heather. I think a great place to start would be to have each of our panelists introduce themselves. So in about 1 minute or so each, if you're able to talk about what you do now and what you thought you were going to do when you were in high school. We'll start with you, Kate.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kate. I'm in my final year of a double degree of electrical engineering and environmental science here at QUT. So I'm in my 5th year, which is quite exciting. It's gone for a long time, but it's been a great experience. Before I started university and when I was in primary school and high school, I probably thought that I'd be a mechanical draftsman like my dad, because I thought that was really cool and I didn't know any women who did it. Or I also had ideas about being a medical researcher, but that's not what I did.
Thanks, Kate. Kim?
Hi, my name is Kim. I studied here and I graduated at the end of last year. I did a double degree of information technology and creative industries with majors in computer science and interaction design. It's a bit of a tongue twister. I've now taken that double degree and I work as a front-end developer at Macleod Digital, creating websites and mobile applications for big client names. I also float around QUT still though. I tutor a first-year web design unit. I work with marketing teams for events such as these. And I do quite a bit. In high school, I was always interested in STEM. I remember picking my senior subjects as ITS, graphics, and physics, and they're all STEM related, they're all design related, and I knew from the get-go. But much, much younger, when I was 3 or 4, I probably thought I was going to be a dancer. Didn't pursue that though.
Thanks, Kim. Julie?
Hi, I'm Julie, and I'm a research scientist at the School of Mathematics here at QUT. I'm working on the field of the coral reef. So we use mathematics and statistics to understand the impact of climate change along the Great Barrier Reef. I always wanted to work in marine science. I grew up close to the sea in south of France, and I always was relatively good with mathematics. Was something that I liked, and I found myself in STEM being able to combine my passion for the marine science with some mathematics. Statistics was something that was really needed now. But when I was younger, I also wanted to be a doctor for the kids. And I realized that was a lot of studies to do. And at the end, I did 10 years of study at university. So
a different kind of doctor. Thank you, Julie. Claudia.
Hi, I'm Claudia Vickers, and I'm the Chief Scientific Officer for a biotechnology startup company called Eat and Brew, and we make animal-free dairy proteins by brewing them in yeast, much like you make beer. I've had a long career in academia and in government research and CSIRO prior to joining the private sector. And I've run large research groups and programs for about 15 years now. I spent quite a bit of time establishing the field and working to build the field of synthetic biology in Australia, which is an advanced genetic engineering field. And I was working a lot with government to try to build that capability and establish pipelines for translation, and then realised that if I wanted to understand what industry needs better, then I would need to be in industry. And so that's why I've taken this sort of sideways step in the last 6 months into industry. I've done a lot of other work that's aligned with STEM careers in science communication, education, outreach. I've worked with the World Economic Forum for the last 2 years on a Global Future Council in synthetic biology. I have editorial positions at about 12 different journals and lots of other stuff. So I've done I guess, lots of different things, and now settled in trying my hand in private industry. When I was a little girl growing up in high school, I thought I was going to be a vet because I grew up on a farm in New Zealand for the first 10 years of my life. And I spent 2 weeks at a veterinary clinic in year 11 or 12 for my like workers experience. And we spent the entire time dissecting cats and dogs. And I was like, this is not for me. So I went into a science degree, general science degree, and had a sort of broad experience doing general science, and then specialized in molecular biology, plant molecular biology, metabolic engineering. And here I am.
Great. Thank you, Claudia. We always talk about how formative those work experiences are. I bet you're glad you figured that out after 2 weeks and not as many years of study as it would have taken.
Last but not least.
Hi, I'm Tamara Morin. Currently, I'm the director of SME Growth Center, and I also wear multiple hats. One of the hats, I am the strategic advisor to Robotics Australia Group. I'm also the national advisor to Australia-India Council. And I also I have my own company, Women in Export Innovation and Investment. And when you look at all of this, what do I actually do? I always call myself a facilitator. So I develop strategy and risk governance framework and pathways where I actually bring, I think I would basically say in a very interesting way, I enjoy what I do. I bring all the talents from research, business, from ground level, from small, medium, large enterprise and startups, and how I help them to create a pathway to be innovative and get into the customer forefront. So I work very closely with large enterprise. So that's kind of like my skill, but formally I was working at trade and investment business for 15 years, 4 years in local government. It's all about economic development, how to create job and how bringing the most capability to meet with the opportunity. That's like in summary. And the way I'm saying it, I really feel I'm like when I look back, when I was a high school student, I was actually studying STEM. I was a science student. I was very, very into biology. I wanted to be a doctor, but that was like my third dream, ambition. The first one, I always wanted to be a pilot. Second, I wanted to be in Air Force. And third, doctor. So when you look at it, it's all about science, like technology, engineering, and maths. Fortunately or unfortunately, the policy where I grew up wasn't very favorable for a female going to Air Force or being a pilot. But then here I am, and it's thanks to STEM, me being very curious, problem-solving ability, and learning from all actors like science and business. And I studied government. Till year 12, I was studying science. Then I did a Bachelor of Public Administration, so understanding of government. Then I studied business. I did an MBA, and then I did a governance degree, and I did my PhD study in agribusiness. So throughout the whole journey, it's that underpinned from science and ability to translate that business language and help the whole ecosystem to get into the opportunity. That's what I do. Thank you.
Oh, thanks, Hannah. That's an amazing set of experiences that you had, and an amazing set of aspirations that you had as a high school student. So, Kate, the first question is going to go to you. And to recap, you're studying a double degree here in electrical engineering and environmental science. And we've already heard that you were interested in STEM from the time you were a high schooler, thinking about going into drafting and mechanical work. What kind of barriers did you face sort of when you began that path?
I think my biggest barrier was I didn't know what I wanted to do, because I was interested in so many different areas of STEM that I couldn't really pick it initially. So what helped me is I found out lots of different experiences that I could do to trial different areas of work. So when I was in grade 10 or 11, I think it was 11, I did this program which was called SparkEd. So we got to work with a medical researcher for a week, helping them with their research. And it was about breast cancer and about a new drug that we were using to trial to see if it would stop the cell growth. So yeah, that didn't actually help me because I really liked that. But I got to experience it, and I knew that I liked that part of science. That was great. I was also interested in health. I didn't know if I I didn't want to be a doctor, but I thought maybe because I like sport, maybe I could do exercise science or be a physio. So I came to QUT and did a little like day that sort of went through all the health sciences that they had, and they talked about what jobs you would have and where it would take you. And I kind of got to the end of the day and was like, no. So that was ruled out. So it was either medical research or engineering, which I'd always been really interested in. And then when I was in grade 12, we got to do this really cool English project, which doesn't really sound like STEM, but I took it into STEM because that's what I liked. It was basically we had to research a current news issue. And just before that, had been in 2016, there was a massive blackout in South Australia where the whole state went black. And I found that really interesting because I was very into the environment, and all these particular people in the government and in the media were blaming it on wind turbines. And I got mad about that. So I researched it, I got very in depth and wanted to find out why that was what people were blaming it on. It turns out it was their fault and not because of their wind turbines. But that's kind of how I picked, because I realized that I was really into the environment, and I found that renewable energy, or just the energy industry in general, had so much capacity for change. So I thought it'd be a great opportunity to work in that industry and help bring it forward. So I kind of just found something I was passionate about and then went from there. But other challenges, I did physics and chemistry, maths C in high school, and there wasn't too many other girls in those classes. But I was very fortunate at my high school. We had a fairly close-knit group of women who did those subjects, so that helped. Especially getting to university, there was less women than I was used to.
Yeah, absolutely. That gives us a lot of context for how you chose then to combine engineering with environmental science. I think it's a logical fit there. So, Kim, to recap, you have a double degree in information technology and creative industries, and now you're a front-end developer with Deloitte Digital. So the tech industry is not one with a lot of women in it. In fact, just 29% of all ICT occupations in Australia are held by women. So tell us, what was your university experience like? What was the gender balance like in your degree? And did this bring any challenges for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Like Kate said, there's not a lot of women that are studying engineering or IT, especially at QUT. But I was in a similar boat with Kate. When I studied IT in high school, it was a class of 16 students, and it was just me as the female. So I didn't really have anyone to bounce my ideas off like I did. The boys in the class were very supportive, though. I still keep in touch with them. We did our computer science degrees together, but I had adapted to that ratio of 16 to 1. And then when I got to university, my classes here were 30 to 1 or 30 to 2 at best. In a lecture room of 150 students, it'd be maybe a dozen girls. So one of the challenges was that, finding people that are like-minded and kind of finding people that had the same thought process as you can bounce ideas off of. And I overcame that by joining student clubs. So QUT's got a student club here called the Women in Technology Society. Their whole idea is to unite and inspire other females studying tech. And I joined as a member in my first year. That's where I made all of my friends. I still keep in touch with them to this day. And through them, I attended all their events and I got to know more about the industry, and it just solidified the fact that, yes, there aren't a lot of women in the tech sector, but we're building towards improving that ratio and solidifying it. And it's been really exciting to watch the percentage grow, especially only being 6 months into my career. It's exciting to see what the industry is like now that I've seen the real world. And then in my third year of university, I stepped into the role of graphics designer in the Women in Technology Club. So I was designing the Facebook banners, social media, the Instagram posts. And then in fourth year, I figured, why not crank it up? And I stepped into the role of president. So that whole final year of my studies was really rewarding, because I remember how much of a benefit that student club was for me when I was a little baby first year, unsure of what to do. Who do I go to for help? Who can I study with? Who's doing my assignments like with me? And I remember just sort of giving that back in my fourth year and making it bigger and better than ever. And yeah, we built a really tight-knit community of women in tech at QUT.
Wow, that's awesome. And I mean, the good thing about the numbers being so low is there's only one way to go.
Exactly.
We're hopefully trending in a good direction. And it sounds like with your help, the student club was able to facilitate a more comfortable environment for the women who were commencing when you were leaving.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember the year that I came into presidency was the year after COVID initially hit. So 2020 was, the year that was null and void. So we had to go big and strong with 2021. We doubled the amount of events we did. We collaborated with clubs across QUT, even across the UQ. And we just kind of forced all of our skills together and brought everyone together. And we ended up increasing the membership number of our club. We started 2021 with 97 members, and we ended the year with 218. So yeah, it was a fantastic year for us. Yeah, which is I'm really proud of that statistic, because even just in the club we grew that much, like in numbers.
Yeah, that's
imagine
impressive.
the studying numbers.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So Julie, the next question's for you. So you're a marine scientist, and one of your projects, Reef Cloud Project, helps sea countries across the Pacific to better protect their coral reefs using AI and statistics. It sounds amazing. Tell us what do you love about working in STEM, and what's a typical day like for you?
What I love in STEM is all the opportunities that you can get once you get the right skills. So if you are able to get some skills that are really needed in the market and in research, for my case, you can really work on cool projects like the project I'm working on the Reef Cloud. We try to use the latest technology with all the statistical modeling, all the knowledge that we have in Australia about coral reef and the new technology, and to try to help other countries in the Pacific to better monitor the coral reef. And so once they can monitor the coral reef, they can better understand what's going on. They can better quantify the impact of climate change and trying to react, to do some actions against it. And I can do this because of my skills, because I have statistical skills. I have skills in data science. I'm also working with a data science center here at QUT, and we actually kind of a lot of women in the center. We're really actively trying to recruit women students and trying to bring them to showing them what is doing research, and showing them that we have no limit. It's not because we're women that we are limited about what we can do. And we have a group of applied mathematics for applied ecology, where this group is composed of mostly 60% of student women. So it's working. In terms of what my days look like, it's some days are quite more boring than other ones. It's a lot behind your computer and behind your screen. But what I love the most is it's about collaborations. Is I can talk with, one day I can talk to statisticians, and we go and on the whiteboard and trying to write equations, trying to brainstorm about how can we find the best solutions to protect the reef. And some other day I'm working a lot in Townsville with the Australian Institute of Marine Science, and then going there, talking to the ecologists, talking about the corals, the ecology, how these amazing creatures work, and constantly learning through this collaboration.
Thank you so much. That does sound amazing. So Claudia, the next question's for you. You started your career here in Brisbane studying science and then doing a PhD in molecular biology. And then, of course, as we heard, you went on to spearhead the development of a whole new research area in synthetic biology research and development here in Australia. including co-founding Synthetic Biology Australasia, having a long career at CSIRO, and now you are Chief Scientific Officer at Eden Brew. How do early career challenges differ from those later in your career? Do things get easier or harder as a woman in STEM?
Yes. So when I was studying in my undergraduate, because I was doing a biological sciences degree, pretty even, sort of 50-50 men and women. And I think that biology tends to have more women in it. I did throw an extra physics class in there because my dad's an electrical engineer and he was like, how can you understand the world without physics? And so I went along and I almost failed it. Had a supplementary and passed it. So you can almost fail a subject and still be successful in your life.
It's a good lesson.
And I think there were 3 girls in that physics class, and it was really fun and really interesting. I don't know why I always failed it. I should have failed it, but anyway. So I think it wasn't noticeable. A gender disparity wasn't noticeable at that stage of my career. When you graduate and you go into a PhD, when I went into a PhD, again it was pretty even in men and women. And I studied I worked in the more basic sciences area for a while, and then I shifted into an institute that was heavily engineering orientated, and I think there was 1 or 2 maybe women out of 18 in the leadership team, the group leaders and senior professors, and it was very noticeable. So at the lower levels of postdocs and the early postdoc career, very much even, but you could see dropping off and really very poor at the high levels. The institute was regularly criticised for this, and it was also really clear that things weren't changing and that the policies that had been put in place weren't being very effective. Early on in that postdoc period, I established the ARBN Early Career Researcher Support Program, and part of that was about providing advice and support mechanisms for PhD students and early postdocs, and particularly women, for finding out what they needed to know, developing networks, talking to older women who'd sort of been through it before. The institute did establish this thing called a Gender Equity Commission, which was sort of something similar and was more focused on support mechanisms for women. And as time went on, there was a really strong push for the institute to start recruiting, which they did more in the middle levels of careers, so that people sort of get growing up through the senior ranks. I think there's still not very much difference at the senior levels and the senior management of the institute there in terms of women and men. So definitely in engineering, there's a long way to go in terms of getting gender equity and gender parity. I'm a chief editor associate editor, 1 of 4 associate editors for the peak journal in my field, ACS Synthetic Biology. And we've worked really hard to have a strong female representation and people of colour representation on the editorial board. But I got a response from an author today that referred to use the masculine gender for the reviewers. Oh, he said blah, 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 right? Actually, the reviewer was a woman, but the bigger point was that in sciences, people still often assume the male gender. So there's definitely, I guess, it's really sexism. It's very alive and well, and the challenges that come with that, especially in the engineering community and engineering disciplines, do exist. So I've had to respond where I've been told that I must have gotten such and such prestigious award because I was a woman and they always struggled to get competitive women. Really offensive. And then when I turned up to the awards ceremony, it was sort of 60% women that year, and I went back and said, oh, hey, you might have to come up with a different reason because obviously they didn't struggle to get competitive women. It was like, oh, but there was no other possible explanation. So really digging in there. And this is the sort of thing that nobody should ever have to put up with. It's obviously clearly verging on misogyny and sexism. Does it get easier over time as you progress in your career? I would say it gets harder because you move into a space where there are fewer women and fewer allies. There's been an expectation, I think, for a long time that women should behave like men to be competitive in that space. But women who behave like men to be competitive in that space are considered to be, well, fill in the blanks, right? So you don't get rewarded for behaving in a more aggressive, masculine way in that environment. Instead, you get sort of attacked for not being feminine. So I think at the moment there are opportunities evolving for women to be leaders in their own right, in their own way, and that's being more recognised. There's plenty of dinosaurs still in the system. Unfortunately, every few years there's a bit of a pruning of the dead wood, and it does get a bit easier. Some of the challenges that arise, of course, are finding that balance between work and family life. If you choose, and I'm so interested in having children, so I have two children, Clara who's 10 and Oscar who's 6. I left it till relatively late, but not unusually late for a woman in science to have children. So I was 35 when I had my first child and 39 when I had my second child. It's always a huge challenge, and there's no good time. Challenges are different when you're earlier in your career as to when you're later in your career. If I had to recommend anything, I'd recommend earlier because of biological reasons. It's just easier to bear children when you're younger and you've got less things to balance. But, it happens when it happens, and there's ways to make it work. And my primary piece of advice for anybody who is planning on making, having a career and potentially having a family, men and women, is to talk to people who've been there and done that and find out what their top tips were, because that's what I did for many years between finishing my PhD, going, oh, this is going to be hard to have children to have a career as well in this field, and actually having them was to actually go out and search down senior women in the field and say, oh, do you have children, or do you not have children, and what's your advice, and how did you do it? And every single one of them was incredibly generous with the advice that she provided me, and incredibly giving and open and honest, really. And I found that to be a very special experience, and that really armed me, I guess, to work out as best I could this balance and approach to making it work successfully. So I think look, there are different challenges at different stages, but there are so many resources. There's groups, and there's STEM groups and support groups. Look for those and seek them out and take advantage of them.
Thank you. That was, I enjoyed your use of metaphor in your answer there. Tamana, last but not least, yet again, you have had such an incredibly varied career that spans so many different sectors, working in government, in private industry, in defense, and your focus has been on creating innovative businesses that can scale domestically and globally. So can you tell us a little bit about a specific career challenge and how you overcame it?
I'm glad that you kept me last for this, and I can probably say to you, not one. I think challenge exists in every single way that I have operated, but that's a very interesting, good question. I don't want to open up the whole Pandora's box. What I would, when I reflect back, now over probably 2 decades of dealing with businesses, being in public sector, in private organization, and also in university. When I look back my career, I actually dealt with different stakeholders in probably 10 sectors. And the sectors, majority of the sectors where women were heavily underrepresented. Think about manufacturing. I'm coming to defense a little bit later. So manufacturing, even agriculture, because of the policy, the stakeholders are actually predominantly male. And there is nothing wrong. But what always has happened for me is when I was, for example, in trade and investment Queensland, working with exporters and helping them to go into overseas market, I'm the one, when you look at me, like thanks to you, like all of you are talking about people from color, like different backgrounds. I'm definitely different background, pale skin, from a non-English speaking background, and working in here, within government and going out to the region, talking to the businesses from the ground level, who are the manufacturers, who are doing all the hard yards, and also like agricultural businesses, health, infrastructure, transportation, construction, architecture. All these hardcore industries are definitely women are not there, like representing. And I was communicating at the key decision-making level. So I was communicating either C-suite or general manager or export manager or business development manager. When you look at that level, and I know, Claudia, you did mention, like when you go up, higher up, it's definitely the women are not there. So I walk into a room, and thanks, defense industry development has always been my journey for last 6 years. And when you think of all this industry and defense, Department of Defense or our Australian Defense Force, I walk into a room being a brown skinned female. I might have brain, but I come to a room where it's fully regimented, protocol, process oriented boardroom. And let's not talk about age, but so I walk into a room where I see people from homogeneous backgrounds, male dominated, highly regimented, and they have their own language. So when I look at it, it's the challenge is how do I get my message across to that industry or any industry? So rather than having challenge, how I did overcome, in very short summary, I always have a PAC strategy. So you're like PAC, I prepare myself. So I always have done my groundwork when I go into a meeting or I'm working with the industry. P is prepare, plan, and understanding of what am I really communicating to them. So when I'm going to Department of Defense, talking about defense industry engagement, I must read all these Harry Potter's novel of Department of Defense's policy. So literally it's like 7 series of Department of Defense, integrated investment strategy, and then social policy, deep and defense industry policy, AIC, Australian industry capability strategy. So it's like 7 novels. It's big, like everybody loves. And public servant, I was there 19 years. So we love different papers. So must prepare. And then also at the same time, when I'm walking into the room, why am I there? So it's that preparation and planning. And also knowing the agenda of my employer. When I'm working for government, what's the agenda for me? And what am I going to achieve? Then what happens is that A, so it's that ability to articulate what I'm learning versus understanding where they come from, the industry come from. So articulate in that way. And my C is actually, you can learn about preparation, your agenda and everything, but C is that communication, collaboration, and connection. That requires not just subject matter experience, but also it requires soft skills. So what I have done is, like when I felt resistance, like sometimes I had to push an agenda that Department of Defense in your Australian industry capability plan, you really have to have 47% of local industry embedded into supplying your capability. That's hardcore because number one, they might not know who's that local industry are. So that communication, what I have done is like knowing the subject matter, but I needed to understand the lingo. So that's that Harry Potter's novel. So my preparation gave me the lingo. But communication is ability to translate research terminology into either defense or that ground level small, medium enterprise. I'm basically saying small, medium enterprise here. I didn't say SME because I remember once I went to a meeting and I said, you really have to help SMEs. And then they said to me, subject matter experts. And I said, oh, yes, I learned. So that's my ability to accept what they're saying to me, but also at the same time, that articulation, I felt like I shouldn't be saying SME anymore. It can be subject matter expert, but it is actually small, medium enterprise. Can be something else. But I think what worked well in that challenging situation is that preparation, planning, and knowing the agenda of the employer, have that articulation action plan, and also at the same time, have that collaboration, connection, and the attitude to communicate and learn from them that those helped me. Thanks.
Thank you. That was that was quite a ride. I can't imagine 7 novels worth of documentation being an easy read. So
256 pages.
I admire your perseverance. So thanks so much for that, Tamanaka. It's a really nice sort of segue into what I'd like to ask you next in a speed round, as quickly as possible. If you had one top tip that you'd like to share about progressing your career, what's helped you to this point, who's helped you, what would that be? Kate?
I think I had really good teachers at school that helped me see how STEM was really relevant and important career, and also university lecturers. Although some of them might not be the best at IT and can't do lecture recordings, they do have a lot of knowledge and are very happy to share it with you. So even if they're great people to be around. So all your teachers and lecturers, very helpful.
Great, and fair jab about the IT. Kim, how about you?
Similar case where I think if you find your tribe and find similar people who think like-minded as you, specifically in my case, I knew that in IT, like it's going to take a little while until the gender ratio is at about 50. It's always going to be predominantly male for the next little bit, and there's no going around that. But I never wanted to be the type of person to, push them away because of that factor. I relied on the peers in my class, regardless of the gender, to support me and to help me become who I am. So I think my tip is to just surround yourself with people who will support you, and anyone who doubts you, just cut them out of your circle. Because I had a similar situation where when I landed my internship in my 3rd year with Deloitte Digital, I had one of my peers, classmates, I don't talk to him anymore. He said I only got it because I was a girl. And I remember being really agitated, and not because I was mad, but because I wanted to prove him wrong. And I just supported myself. I was supported by the people who supported me.
And look who works at Deloitte Digital now. So Julie, what's your top tip?
Kind of the same, similar than the girls, but more like for a higher level. It's find your mentor, find someone that you just want to be like this person, not just because he's a probably a successful woman in science, but also because it's someone who can listen to you. You can talk about everything, answer your question, and you know that she or they will be always here for you when you will need.
We're hearing a lot about support networks. Claudia, how about your top tip?
I'm going to give 2. One is just to reinforce this tip, because finding your mentor but your network of senior people who can provide advice and help you guide your way through that complex maze. And the second one is don't put up with this shit, right? It doesn't have to be the way that nobody should have put up with the sort of experiences that I've had and that other people have had. Call it out. Go to the person that you can talk to about these things. Take up a level until somebody listens and responds and says, no, that's not acceptable, and puts the kibosh on that behavior. So things don't change unless we talk about it and unless we make noise. And for your own sake, as well as for the sake of the people who come after you, you need to make noise.
In 1 minute, I give you 2 tips. One is never lose sight of your vision. You actually have to know what's your vision, what's the purpose, what are you passionate about. Second, all of these are really, really valid, but you really need to have courage to reach out for help. Seek help, have the courage. Help is there, guidance is there, mentoring is there, but you really need to be courageous to go and say, hey, Tamana, I need help. Can you help me? You might get disheartened, but people are there to help you.
That's great. Thank you, Tamana. And I think at this point, Heather, we're going to open up for questions from the audience. Am I correct?
From the audience.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your amazing stories. I loved hearing about the opportunities that STEM has provided. I love the top tips, and I'm going to really remember that PAC next time I go into a meeting. I think that's fantastic. But I think it's really, you've all really emphasized what kind of allies that there are out there. And, women in STEM and increasing diversity in STEM and the opportunities is not a kind of one-off problem for society. It's about systemic change. That's about being those allies. So I'd like to invite you all here to take that away and to be those allies, if you have one takeaway for the panel. Lou here has got the microphone, and we would love to hear your questions from the audience here to our members. We've got about 10 minutes, so you've got time for probably 2 or 3 questions. So be those people who put yourself forward. I encourage you. Yeah, thank you.
I always like looking around these functions to see how many men are here. So thanks to those who turned up. And I guess my question is, you know, we talk a lot about female allies, but I think it's in a industry that's dominated by men. What are the most useful things men can do to be allies?
Might let's direct that probably towards Tamana or Claudia. What if you know, with more experience in what the best things that men can do to be allies?
Look, I think I actually found men were very helpful for me, like in my whole, seriously, like in my journey. And from the last is from the defense, like the defense industry is full of male, and then Department of Defense, in like Australian Defense Force and any other defense force. And as I say, like when I look back, being courageous, and if there is a challenge, I actually seek clarification, like saying, and being humble and respectful to them, saying, what can I do to make it better? And then they actually came out. So I think that ability to accept who I am as a female and not necessarily I can be able to do everything. And then highlighting the partners to them and seeking guidance from them helped me.
So for men, it's about being an ally as well, and it's about speaking up when you see things that aren't quite right, and also about making space. So I've never been accused of being a wallflower. You know, I'm pretty vocal, and I make space for myself in a discussion. I have opinions, and I'm happy to give them. But a lot of women aren't, especially in male-dominated environments. So it's about looking around and going, who hasn't spoken? Oh, hi, Jennifer, speak up. We would really like to hear from you. We know you're an expert in this space. It's about identifying when some guy is mansplaining, which really still happens quite a lot, and saying, oh, such and such is actually the subject expert, internationally renowned. Why don't you, pipe down and let her speak? It's about calling out when, and this happens really often, surprisingly often. And when it first happened to me, I was like, really? That happens? So I was sitting in a room, almost all men, one other woman, and I said, idea, blah, 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 idea, thought. And the conversation moved around, and Professor sitting next to me went, oh, blah, 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 thought. And it was the same thing that I'd said slightly differently. And everybody went, oh, right, yeah, that's a great idea. Hello? You can call that. And I looked across the table, and one of my male colleagues looked at me with his eyebrows raised, and I raised my eyebrow, and the discussion went on. But that male colleague should have said, oh, that's what Claudia just said, Speak up. You have more power in these dynamics still. It shouldn't be the case, but you do. So use that power, use it as a force of good.
You know what I love about when we address things like diversity is we make it better for everybody.
Yeah.
Not just women. So I think that's a really excellent point.
Yeah.
Any more questions? Yep.
So mine's for mine's for Kate in particular. You mentioned that when you were in high school, you were interested in mechanical drafting. Did you look into that at all before you sort of stepped towards your, I suppose, more university-based STEM career?
Yeah. Well, since my dad worked in there, I sort of just talked to him about it. I also did graphics when I was in grade 9 and 10, so I got a bit of an idea of what it was like from there. And I just sort of worked out that I didn't really vibe with mechanical, so that's why I didn't go into it. But I definitely did consider like electrical drafting. But yeah, I kind of eventually, when I sort of picked where I was interested in, I chose it not necessarily. I didn't choose electrical engineering because I loved electrical engineering. I chose it because of what I could get out of it. in terms of working in the industry they wanted to be in. So yeah, that's kind of why I didn't go down that way in the end. That answers your question.
Excellent, thank you.
This is not, it's not a Dorothy Dixon either. As a mother with a young girl who currently is dead set on being a science artist and a professional gamer, come commentator in her idea. But I guess the thing is, we know that we can get girls interested in STEM at primary school. There's no difference. They don't see a diversity or any sort of difference between them studying STEM at primary school and boys studying STEM at primary school. Where we do see that difference come in is in high school. My question is, and this might be really well placed for both Kate and Kimberly, given that you've most recently come out of high school, how do we keep girls interested in STEM when they're the only one in their tech class or the only one in graphics? How do we keep their interest, and how do we keep that spark alive for them?
Great question. Kim, you want to start?
Yeah, sure. I think what I always reminded myself of when I was going through high school is that there's never going to be a point in time where STEM skills aren't useful, right? There could be careers in 5 years from now that don't even exist yet today. And I think that's what motivated me to stick with it and know that there's going to be so many opportunities to create new things, mend old things, and just innovate anything to do with STEM. So that's what motivated me. What about you, Kate?
I think it's very important having teachers that are both supportive of you as like a female and male, or any gender, because if you don't have role models, or if you have people telling you that you shouldn't do that because you're this or that can be really disheartening as well. Like in a sort of a switch but related way, my partner, who's male, he was told by his English teacher that boys don't do English, so you can never get an A in English because you're a boy. And that completely turned him off English. But the same thing can exactly happen with women in STEM, and it does happen. So I think it's very important that teachers in school, even if it's like a subconscious thing, they say, oh, this engineer, he does this, but it's actually, and they're just putting that out there as a hypothetical engineer. It's very important that they don't subtly turn you away.
Yeah, fantastic. I love that. And I think, when we're talking about smashing stereotypes, you're all living that right now. So, thanks again for being that and putting yourself out there, and for taking that time out of what you are doing in leadership, in strategy, in conservation, in a new career, and in your uni studies, for taking the time to kind of put yourself out there and to be that person as well. We're going to have to finish up for our online audience here, but both online and physical audiences, please do grab some swag. You can grab this for free online, and you can also grab a copy at the back there. If you're interested in any of these careers and looking for different directions, there is also so many opportunities, as I say, in STEM. STEM can lead to so many different places. So again, you can grab these online or grab these at the back of the office. If you're interested in studying STEM, if this has sparked something for you, please head to qut.edu.au/think-STEM/. You will find an awful lot of great things. If you're watching this now and you think, oh my gosh, I should share this with my niece/daughter/class, we will have the recording up live on careerswithstem.com.